Hey, vinyl community, Tony P. coming at you from the basement, La Casa de Perla, La Hacienda, the Ponderosa, if you will. Waiting for that snowstorm to come up to the East Coast here in Western Pennsylvania. Hopefully it's just rain. But this video is about showing off a little bit of my jazz collection. It's not a great jazz collection. It's not filled with the usual suspects, although I do have a couple in there that are icons in the jazz music industry. And I apologize ahead of time for my voice. I think maybe I'm coming down with something. I wish it was money, but it's probably a cold. But anyway, I digress. Show a little bit of my collection. I think Mazzy started this off with showing a little bit of his jazz collection, and some other people jumped aboard. And it's been a while. I'm still working on my Linda Ronstadt deep dives, and I watched Jeff Witcher's deep dives, and I am not worthy. You know, he does such a fantastic job. I can't compete. So I will do the best I can with those two. But if you ever get a chance, Jeff Witcher does a tremendous job on his deep dives. Watch him. So I am going to segue into a different part of my room so I can get going. Okay? So bear with me for a second.
All right, let's get going. Now, pardon my finger there. I'm trying to hold the camera while I'm doing this, which is highly unprofessional, but hey, we do things as best we can here in La Casa de Perla from the basement, Tony P. Now, also, excuse my voice. I think I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold, so hang in there with me, and we'll try to do this really quickly. First one I have is Joni Mitchell's Mingus. This is shown a lot on the VC. This is a collaboration between Joni Mitchell and Charles Mingus. Of course, this was recorded a few months before he passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't know if any of you know that when he died, they cremated him almost immediately, I think, the next day. And his ashes were scattered in the headwaters of the Ganges River in India. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's Joni Mitchell and Mingus. George Benson, this guy gets little love in the VC. Great jazz guitarist. He's from Pittsburgh. Very soulful. He has, I think I have two of his albums. In Flight's one, I think, and the other one's Living Inside Your Love, George Benson. Jazz guitarist, good jazz guitarist, like I said, Pittsburgh guy. I think he won something like 10 Grammys. So George Benson, and I believe this came from Greg from 3 Dimensions of Sound. Has a little bit of VCLT, which is great, love it. Now this is New Orleans Sweet Emma and her Preservation Hall Jazz Band. Now, this young lady is self-taught. I think you can see her right there. It's the New Orleans type of jazz, the fun, the exciting type of jazz. I think she was, this is in 1963. She was part of Cincinnati Kid. She was in the movie Cincinnati Kid. I think she even played in one of the scenes. So it's Emma, Sweet Emma, and her Preservation Hall Jazz Band. This is Santana, Caravanserai. How many of you know what a caravanserai is? Ha ha ha, the teacher in me. From what I've researched and learned, it's an inn or a place for those people who are in a caravan, traveling across the desert and stopping to get some refreshments or whatever. This is when Santana sort of sways from his Latin roots a little bit, and he delves into a little bit of Far Eastern composing. Clive Davis told him he was committing a career suicide, even though this wasn't commercially successful. It's a good album. I love the song. If you were if you find this in a dollar bin, I would definitely get it. This is great. You usually find them in the dollar bins. This here is Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. Look who he's with here. Cannonball Adderley, Paul Chambers, James Cobb, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly. This is considered by many to be his masterpiece. This came out in 1959. Some people believe it's the greatest jazz record ever recorded. Now, this, of course, is a reissue. It's not a first one. A legend has it that none of the people who participated in this album ever rehearsed. That is not true. That is just jazz lore. Miles Davis. The Mahavishnu Orchestra, Birds of Fire. And this, of course, was led by John McLaughlin. Another one of those little bit far out jazz fusion type of record. I really, really like it. I really enjoyed it. The first time, I had to give it a couple spins, but this is definitely a jazz fusion classic. If you are new to jazz, I would not recommend this one. The title track, The Birds of Fire, may scare you away from jazz fusion. Again, another icon, much like Miles Davis. You have John Coltrane here, Love Supreme. This came out in 1964. He had McCoy Tyner on him, Jimmy Garrison, Elvin Jones. It's a wonderful recording. This is one of the ones you put on at night, and you have that adult beverage, and you just sit back and relax for those summer days when you have the nice breeze on the veranda, on the deck, and you're just sitting back and relaxing and enjoying it. Now, this is considered John Coltrane's masterpiece. Let's see who we have next. Another guy who I don't think gets a lot of love in the VCs, Maynard Ferguson, great trumpeter. If you ever find him somewhere in the dollar bin, which you probably will, you pick this one up. There are 3 other albums in this set. This, of course, is Maynard Ferguson, MF Horn number 3, and of course the MF stands for Maynard Ferguson. I don't think it stands for anything else. Beautiful, beautiful trumpet player. He hits those crescendos so high. Sort of a little bit of a funk, a little bit of a jazz. Great sound. It's just wonderful. If you find it, get it. I have another one of his, Maynard Ferguson, plays jazz for dancing. Beautiful, melodic, primarily one of those things that you would put on late at night. Mazzy might call it, what do you usually call it? Lounge music, bachelor pad music. You might want to do that. Now, this one I took a little risk on. I found this in a dollar bin too. This is Zephyr by Tsuyoshi Yamamoto, Bob Mays, Jeff Hamilton, Jeff Clayton. Tsuyoshi Yamamoto is primarily a piano player. Joe is the guy who ever owned it. That's not part of the album cover. This came out in 1981. Not much in the United States. Primarily played abroad. Lived in New York City for a year, and that's about it. Again, very melodic jazz. A lot of people like that kind of jazz. And what would jazz be without this great woman here, Ella Fitzgerald, Ella Live. Now, this is a comp. Now, Ella put out I want to say in the 1960s, there was 4 albums that she put out that she sang abroad in. Mac the Knife was from Berlin. Ella in Hamburg. I can't remember what the other 2 is. Ella, the Opera House, and I can't remember what the 4th one was. Ella de la Pins, something like that. Again, what can you say about Ella Fitzgerald and that beautiful voice? Her and Linda Ronstadt, my 2 favorite female vocalists. Getz Gilberto. This is, of course, is a standard. If you go into jazz, you have to have one of these recordings of Gets Gilberto, The Girl from Ipanema, featuring Antonio Carlos Jobim. This came out probably 1964. Astrid Gilberto, the wife of João Gilberto, sings this. And this record lays claim to the bossa nova, or the introduction to the bossa nova. And The Girl from Ipanema was based on a true life young lady who would go every day to the market, and the men would, do their cat calls and so on and so forth. So this was about this young lady. Now, I put two of these out here because, as you see, this is a Verve. I found this in a dollar bin. Verve, that's an original. Then I saw this one online for $17. And you notice it's not Verve. This is Dole. And I want to say Germany. I always get this mixed up. It's either Germany or Russia. I can't remember which one it is. This is not a really good sounding record at all. It almost sounds like they copied it off of a CD and tried to make the copy. Very, 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 very heavy on the bass. I almost had to turn my bass completely off to play it and turn the volume really low. So I would stay with the original. I wouldn't stay with that. And the reason why I bought it, it was like $15. And I thought, geez, that for $15? Well, that was a waste of $15. This gentleman right here is Earl Gardner, another Pittsburgh native. He went to a high school. I don't think it's in Pittsburgh anymore. I think they sort of merged. It was George Westinghouse High School. He was contemporaries of Billy Strayhorn, who went there, and also Ahmad Jamal, better known as Franklin Russell Jones, who is still alive, by the way. Ahmad Jamal, I think he's like 93, 94. I don't think he lives in Pittsburgh, though. I can't remember where he lives. But Errol Garner, very, very, very good piano player. Love him tremendously. I don't usually find him in the dollar bin. I don't usually find his records at all, which is hard to believe. Great piano player. And what was unique about him, he would vocalize while he played the piano, and you would hear him humming or even singing a little bit under his breath while he was playing. They did a documentary on him too. Because he didn't learn how to read music. And they asked him why he never learned how to read music. And he said that no one can ever hear you read. And they did a documentary on him, and I have not watched it, which I'm going to, about his life, and it's called No One Can Hear You Read. Errol Gardner, fantastic. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of music that he had written or done that has not been released. And it would be really nice if someone would release some of the material that's out there. It's like a treasure trove of information. This is another one of my famous, Chuck Mangione, Bella Via. That was his mother's maiden name. There's a beautiful picture, I believe, on the back of them. Wedding picture. That's his mother's maiden name. Love Chuck Mangione, love his trumpet playing. And that's probably because back when I was younger, I was a trumpet player first when I was 12 or 13. I really loved it. I loved it so much I was flunking everything else, which eventually happened to me. My dad took the trumpet away, and that was history. And I was forced to repeat second grade. Yes, second grade. Sixth grade. So, that being said, this is probably most people know this album, Chuck Mangione, It Feels So Good. Da 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 da. You know, you get the hint. That's it. This, I don't know if I should have put this one in here. This is Mahalia Jackson, 1980, from the Newport Jazz Festival. It is not a jazz record. It's primarily a gospel record, but with her voice, and Bob was the owner. Bob is not part of the cover, but such a wonderful voice, such a powerful voice. I think she was mentored to Aretha Franklin, so I had to mention her. She, again, not too much love. Tyree Glenn. I don't know too much about him. Tyree Glenn, I know he played with Cab Calloway. I know he played with Duke Ellington. He was one of Louis Armstrong's all-stars. Very smooth jazz, very melodic of the typical 1950s. He's very, very good. Tyree Glenn, great sounding record. I don't know if they say who else is with him on here. Oh, yes, it does here. Hank Jones, Joe Jones, Tom Potter, and Mary Osborne. Tyree Glenn. Put that back here. Bob James, Touchdown. Now, this was another VCLT from Greg at 3 Dimensions of Sound. And it's a good jazz album, but I think this guy was belittled very much in the record industry. Record critics as elevator music. It's very, very smooth jazz. A lot of hip hoppers, as I did my research on this album, a lot of hop stars. Boy, I can't speak tonight. I'm sorry, it's a cold in me. Sample the heck out of this album. And you probably know him mostly for Angela. The name of the song was the theme from Taxi. And I think the other one was Caribbean Nights they used somewhere too. But Bob James, Touchdown, it's a great sounding jazz record. Now, here's something you don't usually hear about in the jazz community, a jazz violinist. This is Stefan Grappelli, I'm sorry. It's called Uptown Dance. Plays the violin. Very catchy tunes, easy listening. When you start playing this, you can't help but tap your foot. This is another one of those ones I call it those Sunday afternoons outside in the summertime with a drink in your hand and just enjoying the afternoon and listening to this. Stefan Grappelli, excellent, excellent. Herb Alpert and Hugh Masekela, that was written on there too. That's not part of the album. Steve Carlson, I think you would like this album very, very much. There's a lot of world music on there. A lot of jazz from the continent of Africa. Skokian. There was a Zimbabwe writer, I believe, who wrote that. August Masruwa. I can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry. And the Sikonian, that was an illegal drink that they made. You can ferment it in one day and drink it. And I guess that's what that song is about. That's probably the most famous on this. But that's a real good one. A little bit of Latin, a little bit of West African jazz, East African jazz. I think Tommy Tedesco's somewhere on this album too. Tommy Tedesco. Spyro Gyra. Now, I fell in love with Spyro Gyra. I found one in the dollar bin somewhere, and I did not find one in the dollar bin. I think Greg, again, from 3 Dimensions of Sound, and I think Shadow Man, Mikey, sent me one from Canada. The first one's probably the one you know about the most. Morning Dance. And you can always tell that's Spyro Gyra by their covers. Great covers. Spyro Gyra. Jazz Fusion, I guess you would call it that. Jazz Fusion is another one. This is Catching the Sun. Great covers. Great covers. Last but not least, Pat Metheny. This one's New Chautauqua. I think they have another one, American Garage, back here. Again, I think that was from 3 Dimensions of Music. BCLT'd me that, and also Mikey, the Shadow Man, gave me that. Great guitarist. If you ever get a chance to listen to Pat Metheny, really great jazz guitarist. But that was not his first instrument. When he was young, guess what it was? The trumpet. Seems like we all started in trumpet. I think I was like middle school band. You had to pick an instrument, and you thought that the trumpet was cool, so you picked the trumpet up. And the story goes that when he heard the Beatles for the first time, he gave up the trumpet and went straight to the guitar on his Gibson ES 140. I think that's what it was. Great music, great jazz. If you ever get a chance to buy Pat Metheny, I would do that. So here you have it. I talked for almost 20 minutes. I don't usually try to keep them under 10. So I hope you stuck around. That's my jazz collection. I do have some in CDs. I might do that in a part 2. Who knows? We'll see. So, God bless you. Take care. May the force be with you. Nanu Nanu. And even Linda says, good night.